Hey guys, it's Kevin in my review for the latest new miniseries from Hulu, of course being Little Fires Everywhere. So what Little Fires Everywhere is essentially about is we center on the Richardson family in the late 90s, and they are your typical, very sort of high maintenance, very overly privileged, family and things like that. They really do seem to be very well off, and so they're going about their lives, and one day, the matriarch of the family, Elena, stumbles across this woman, Mia Warren, who basically is looking for a place to live with her daughter, Pearl. These two have really been in and out of communities and things like that. And so, without thought, Elena decides to offer her this house that was basically on the market that the Richardsons also own, if she decides to also work as their maid. So Mia does take this job, but very quickly after, these two women start to realize just how toxic of presences they both are going to be. They really do start to ruin things within within each other's lives, and tons of secrets unravel, and really do start a cycle of self-destruction for both parties, and that's really all I'm going to say. So of self-destruction for both parties, culminating eventually in the Richardsons' house being set on fire and us not really knowing what could be the cause of it. So, Little Fires Everywhere overall, I was interested in this show. I didn't really know that much of it. All I knew is that it was going to be another Reese Witherspoon show, who she has been working so hard lately. It's actually insane just how many shows she has been in lately, between this, Big Little Lies, and The Morning Show. I mean, that woman really has her work cut out for her. I can't think of another actress on TV right now that is working as hard as Reese Witherspoon is. It's absolutely insane the amount of projects she's taken on. But knowing that she had another series coming out, that alone had me very intrigued. I really do like what I've seen of Kerry Washington as well. Seeing both of these women in a show was enough for reason to get me excited. The trailers definitely look like it could be something very promising, but it wasn't a show I was like hyped out of my mind for. So I went into it with pretty, I would say, mild expectations. I wasn't expecting anything that big. I wasn't expecting anything amazing from the show. I was really just expecting it to be hopefully a solid show, but one that I was kind of worried would be in like soap, would potentially be in soap opera territory as well. I really didn't know how it was going to turn out, but I checked out the first 3 episodes, and from that point on, I very quickly started to really love this show a lot. Little Fires Everywhere is a show that definitely we have seen before, but it tells its story in a very different kind of way. This is a very riveting and very thought-provoking series that I think is really going to I think is really going to get people to ask a lot of questions and really affect many different kinds of people. But we're just getting to right now, starting off with the cast. And I'll say this right now, for a show like this to work, you need a really committed cast. I do not think that this show would work if it wasn't for its cast here, and gratefully, we are given one of the best ensembles that I have seen all year. Everyone does such a fantastic job. Now, the obvious big star is Reese Witherspoon, who, again, is the type of actress that we've seen her do so many things, lately. She's been in a lot of projects, and so because of that, you might expect her to feel a bit fatigued, like, oh, I've done this before. But here's the thing with Reese Witherspoon, is that I hear so many people saying that her character in this show is similar to the one she's playing in Big Little Lies, and I don't really get it, because aside from the fact that Witherspoon is such a likable actress, Elena Richardson is nothing like any other character she's played before. I mean, Witherspoon is playing a very different kind of character here. Yes, on the set, like at the surface, Elena seems very caring and very good natured and things like that. Someone that's trying to do everything she can for her family, and someone who is definitely this really nice and passionate woman. But in reality, Elena Richardson is honestly a fucking monster, and Witherspoon does such an excellent job at playing her, mainly because, again, we've never really seen this side of her before, so it really does make it, I think, one of her best performances yet. There were so many times in this show where I was so angry at this character. I hated what she was saying. Elena Richardson is someone who is just very overly critical of people. She's very manipulative. She's incredibly vindictive. She has this very myopic view of the world, and just in general, she's very hard to deal with at points. But again, that's how the character's supposed to be, and Witherspoon does such an excellent job, I think, really relishing into this role to the point where at points you can almost understand why she is this way. And again, not trying to absolve her of anything, but it's due to how great Witherspoon is here, the layers that she gives this character. She just really sinks her teeth into this, and you can tell this is probably one of her hardest roles she's ever pulled off, and I just think she did such an excellent job here. It's a real challenge to make an actress like Witherspoon, you know, that unlikable, but she really does go for it, and like I said, I think offers up one of her most impressive performances yet. I just really loved what she ended up doing here, particularly in the back half of the show, where she really gets to show off her true colors. I just really love what she was doing here. The same goes for Kerry Washington, who I know people have a very sort of love or hate sort of relationship with as an actress, and from what I've seen of her, I've always been impressed. I haven't watched Scandal and things like that, so maybe if I watch that, I could see where people are coming from, but her work here as Mia Warren, I thought was fantastic. I loved what she was doing in this role, because Mia is very different from Elena, in the sense that she's a lot more quiet and reserved and closed off, but she also harbors a lot of hatred for what's going on. You can tell from the very second she meets Elena, there is a very clear disconnect, and Washington, I think, does a really great job at selling it, but also just selling how hurt this character is. There's a lot of pain that she's been through without spoiling anything, and I think Washington just did such a great job with portraying that here, and the chemistry, or should I say mostly lack of chemistry between these two characters, is fantastic. Whenever they're on screen together, you are glued to the screen. I loved everything that these two are doing. They really do a great job, I think, of working together. It helps that Witherspoon and Washington are friends in real life, and so they already have that natural chemistry, but just to see them go off on one another, it's really fantastic to watch, and they're definitely one of the best parts of the show. Now, surprisingly though, I actually did not find either of them to be the big standout here, because I have to say, the cast of young actors that we have here is one of the best that I have seen maybe since Stranger Things. I was so impressed by everyone here, but particularly the three main teenage girls in this show, I thought were all phenomenal. Lexi Underwood is definitely one of them, who plays Pearl, Mia's daughter. I was blown away by her in the show. I loved what she was doing. I haven't really seen her much of anything before, but there are points in this show where she is honestly, you know, out acting Washington, and Washington is such a talented actress in that way, so it really does take a real talent to do that, but she does such a great job, really just showing someone like Pearl that has not really had the chance to be a normal teenager, but really wants to, and is frequently frustrated with her mother. These two have a very contentious relationship, but you still always know where Pearl is coming from. She probably is one of the nicest characters in this entire show, and I think overall she just did a really great job here. Jade Pettyjohn as well. Holy shit. I mean, look, I remember when she was in School of Rock, and she was the best thing about that show. Despite the fact I didn't like that show very much, I knew she was going to be something big, and I watch her here, and I am just so impressed with what I am seeing from her. I definitely made the right call for sure, because she is amazing in this show as this character Lexi that is absolutely going to be one of the characters that you likely will hate the most this year. But again, that's the point. This is someone that is someone that always thinks that they're doing the right thing, and that's why you can't stand her, because she always feels that she is in the right. She's always justifying her very ignorant and frankly racist behavior that she partakes in, and I think Pettyjohn just did such a great job. Where she ends up going throughout the show is really well done, and I just thought she was really great here, but easily I think the strongest performance of this entire show actually comes from Megan Stott, who plays the character of Izzy. Holy shit, I was really blown away by her as well. Lexi Underwood for a while was the big standout, but I gotta say, the work that Stott does in the back half of the season is just unreal. I loved everything that she was doing here. Izzy is easily, I think, maybe the most complex character of this entire show. What she's going through, I think a lot of people are going to connect to, and she has some really amazing work in the back half of the season, and I just loved what she ended up doing here. I thought she did such an excellent job. So yeah, again, just and then the two boys as well, Jordan Ellis, I believe is how you pronounce his name, and also Gavin Lewis. They're not on the level, I would say, of Pettyjohn, Underwood, or Stott. That trio is just amazing, and I love everything about them. But they still do a really great job, and it's not like they're bad or anything. Like, they're still really good in the show. It's just they happen to be, with this very talented ensemble, and I just thought they did a really great job. And the fact that you have someone like Joshua Jackson in the cast, who is such a good actor and has some really great work, and the fact that he's almost outshined by these kid actors really should tell you just how great of a cast this really is. Even some of the smaller performances in the show, like say AnnaSophia Robb, for example, was phenomenal here. She's not in the show very much at all. She's only in 2 episodes as the younger Elena, but she nailed everything. She had everything down pat, the mannerisms, the ways that Elena carries herself. She very well studied what Reese Witherspoon was doing, and I just thought she did such a phenomenal job here. I don't think I've ever seen her quite this good before, and I thought that she was just amazing in this show. And if we're talking about, like, guest star spots, I mean, everyone in the show needs to win Emmys, definitely. Everyone needs to win Emmys for sure, at least be nominated at the very least, especially the trio of young women that I talked about. I think they definitely do need to get Emmys. But AnnaSophia Robb, if she does not get a nomination for guest star, I don't know what's wrong with them. I really don't, because I think this is everything that I think she did everything she needed to do. I think she did such a phenomenal job here. And same with Tiffany Boone as the younger Mia too. She also was very impressive, but AnnaSophia Robb was just a revelation in this role. I was so impressed by what she was doing here. And like I said, I've truly never seen her quite this good before. Really, everyone in this cast just does such an excellent job, really rounding out, I think, one of the best ensembles in any show you'll see this year. The cast alone, I think, is enough for a reason to watch this show. They really do some excellent work throughout this entire thing. Now let's get to the directing and the writing, which with a show like this, something that, again, people have seen before, you have to be very careful with the way that you direct it, and I feel like the directing in the show was really well done. The whole show is helmed by Liz Tigelar, but every single episode, almost every single episode, is directed by someone different. Most of them are directed by this actress, this director, Lynn Shelton, and I just thought the directing was really well done in the show, because yes, this show can definitely get over the top at points, but I feel like for the most part, it's a very authentic portrayal of what these two families would go through. The show starts off, honestly, kind of fun. You find yourself very enchanted by this family. You find yourself very just, you find it's very easily inviting in that way. And then as the show goes on, it starts to get a lot darker, to the point where it's very bleak. There's not a lot of hope in the last few episodes, and honestly, I kind of saw it as sort of what the characters of Mia and Pearl are going through. The show kind of the show kind of has the audience, kind of portrays, it has you in the same place. The show will frequently have the audience on the same level as how Mia and Pearl are feeling, because again, they at first feel they're in open arms by the Richardson family, but as the show goes on and they start to realize a lot more, they start to realize, yeah, this isn't that great. We've made a terrible mistake here, and things just keep going, getting worse and worse for all these characters. And I just thought the directing was really well done here, particularly, like I said, in the back half of the season. I think they really really did a great job with just going for it. The show does not hold back. It's not a subtle show. I will say that right now. If you want a subtle show, this is definitely not it at all. But I don't really feel like it needs to be. I think it does a great job with what it needed to do, and that's something I was just very impressed by. But the writing is what really impressed me with the show. I think the writing is pretty spectacular here, particularly with the contrast between these two families, because a lot of the show, it's about a variation of topics. It touches upon racism. It touches upon, just adolescence and things like that. It touches upon, sexism and all that kind of stuff. But I think its main sort of story is really about the class divide between these two families, because you have the Richardson family and they just have it all pretty much. I mean, they, like I said, they're in this great mansion. Elena is this journalist of sorts, and her husband, her husband Bill is this really dedicated attorney. He's very well respected. The main daughter Lexi, she is like, valedictorian. She's trying to go to Yale as like a senior, and then Trip Richardson, he's like a jock and things like that. So the family really does have it all pretty much, except for one thing, and that is that they're not the nicest bunch of people. They kind of start off and you think that they're nice, but very quickly you start to realize that this family is not what they appear to be. Well, mostly. Most of them aren't what they appear to be, especially when it comes to Elena, who, like I said, from the moment the show starts, you know there's something off about her. The way that she's going about things, she's just being a little too open. She's being a little too inviting in that way, and I think the show did a really great job at dissecting her character, because like I said, this is not at all a good person. She is very overly critical, and once she starts to realize some inconsistencies in Mia's backstory, she becomes a lot harder to handle, and she really starts to make some irrational decisions. And again, that's when Elena's character just becomes that much more interesting. And there is actually a really good reason for why she is the way she is. It does take a while to get there, but you really do understand where Elena is. They did a really good job with it. I like the way they dived into Elena's life, but also the way that she would talk to someone like, say, Mia, or her daughter's boyfriend, who also is black in that way. This family is definitely very racist, but it's not the type of racism that you normally see on TV. These guys are not necessarily just against like black people, like they don't want anything to do with them. Instead, it's almost like the family in Get Out, where they are just constantly trying to appeal to them. They're constantly trying to act like they are on the same level, and you can tell it makes these people more increasingly uncomfortable as the show goes on. And you really do feel that throughout the show. She's the kind of person who, when her daughter brings home, her boyfriend, the first thing she talks to him about is like MLK and things like that. Every single time she brings this up, and Elena doesn't seem to see anything wrong with this. And again, even though this is the 90s, I feel like stuff like this still does very much happen today, unfortunately. So I feel like there's going to be a lot of relatability to this show. I feel like there's going to be things that go down here that people are really going to find themselves connecting to. You're going to find yourself in a similar situation like this, and I think they do a good job with that, and that's something I thought was definitely very well done. But the other big part of the story, so yeah, I think that is definitely very well done, the way they depict a lot of these characters, and the way that that's also mirrored in the character of, say, Lexi Richardson is also really well done, because you get the sense that Lexi is the way she is because she doesn't see anything wrong with this behavior. She's essentially been rewarded for it her entire life, and considering just how monstrous her mother is in that way, you can understand why Lexi would be that way. It almost feels like that's an inevitability in that way, and I thought they did a really good job with getting into that. And again, they do a good job of gradually getting you to know Lexi. At first, when you meet her, you think that she's just this really nice girl who is pretty much perfect in the way her mom wants her to be. But as the show goes on, you really start to realize, again, just the bias that she has, and especially the privilege that she has. Lexi's the kind of person that feels that she can do basically anything, and nobody is going to criticize her. Nobody's going to come after her because she's rich and because she's spoiled and because she gets straight A's. She does not feel there's anything wrong with what she's doing. And I thought they did a really good job with that storyline. It could have gone in a very cringy and preachy direction, but it doesn't feel that way. It feels like the conversations that these characters have about race and things like that, they feel needed. They feel like authentic conversations that I feel like people still have today. And I think that's something that a lot of people are going to relate to. And the way they contrast that would say the Warren family, who are in a much different situation financially, obviously, but also Mia is a very complex character in that way, because she seems at first like she's a better mother to Pearl, but you start to realize that neither of these two women are necessarily good mothers. Like I said, Pearl and Mia have a very frequently contentious relationship. They're very often at each other's throats because Pearl has a lot more that she wants than Mia can provide for her. And you can see that Mia really is doing, while she says that she's doing everything that Pearl wants, that's not necessarily the case. A lot of the things that she's doing are not necessarily things that Pearl wants her to do. There's a lot of things that go on in this show, that you can see as it goes on, that Pearl is just not okay with. And I think that's another thing the show just does a really good job with getting into. There's a lot of information that Mia has withheld from Pearl. There's a lot of things that Mia is doing that Pearl is just not okay with. And the way that she starts to get ingrained with the Richardsons and starts to really appreciate them more and almost becomes a part of their family, that's where Mia's storyline becomes that much more interesting. And I think they do a really good job with getting us into that, the situation that she's in. And again, not making her feel like a one-note character. And I think some people might find themselves not as interested with Mia because for a while, it seems like they're kind of treading the same ground with her. But similar to Elaine, they do eventually reveal what's going on with Mia. And when it's revealed, it's definitely very effective. It makes a lot more sense why Mia is acting the way that she does, because she constantly seems like she is trying to keep Pearl on a leash. She's terrified of what could possibly happen to her daughter. She's very overprotective of her. She's very specific with what Pearl can and can't do. And you really are wondering what her problem is in that way. And I think they do a really good job with that here and showing the differences very well, but also the similarities in both women. They definitely are not necessarily good people. And I think the show does a really good job with getting you into that. They've just gone on very different paths. And I think, again, the show just has a lot to say about class systems and different ways to, different sort of parenting styles. And I think that stuff is definitely very well done. But another vital piece of the show that I think a lot of people are going to connect to is the character of Izzy, because that's the other big part of Elena's storyline, is that she seems to have a really bad relationship with her youngest daughter, Izzy. These two, they do not see eye to eye at all. Anytime that Elena is trying to help her out, she's always giving her the worst advice possible. These two, that relationship is pretty much just broken. And what they do with this character, I think I think she maybe becomes the best character of this entire show. Her transformation, where she ends up going here, is really well done. It's pretty clear from the beginning that Izzy clearly is a lesbian, and she is afraid to come out, and she's struggling with these feelings, and not just because of the times, but the type of family that Izzy, lives in, and the fact that it's clearly not accepted in that way really makes it very easy, I think, to connect with this character, because Izzy is someone that really is trying to gain that love and acceptance from her family, and so many people are shutting her down. The siblings in general, they do not get along in the way that normal siblings would. They're constantly at each other's throats. They're constantly shutting each other out. They don't know how to have conversations with each other. she goes to her father, and he doesn't do anything because he's too much of a, he's too passive and things like that. He's very passive aggressive in that way. And so she really is trying to gain that acceptance. And the bond that she forms with Mia as a character, I think was actually really sweet. It's maybe the best relationship on the entire show. I very much found myself getting invested in their scenes together. I really love where they ended up going with that. And I just think that overall was really well done. I really love the way they get you into that relationship overall. And the other big thing that people are going to wonder is what really causes the rift between Mia and Elena. Because like I said, from the second that Mia meets Elena, you can tell that there is definitely some kind of divide there. These two, they are just not on the same wavelength at all. Elena is thinking much differently than Mia is. So you're just kind of waiting for that to explode. You're waiting for them to get to a point where they just want nothing to do with each other. And when it's eventually revealed, what's going to cause this, which does actually happen earlier than you think. It happens basically at the halfway point of the season, which this season's only 8 episodes, so it is pretty early on. You really do understand it. And I think the way that they get into that divide and where this sort of takes them as characters only makes the story that much more interesting. You would think once they are at that point, maybe things wouldn't be as interesting because, the buildup is pretty much done. Now it's all just about them, just constantly trying to ruin each other's lives. But they really do a good job, I think, of getting into both of these characters, their backgrounds, what they've been through, what's gotten them to this point, and it only makes them that much more interesting. Elena starts to become a lot more intrusive in that way. Mia starts to become a lot more fearful of what's going on, and I thought that was just really well done, the way the show got into that, and that was something I definitely really did appreciate. And even some of the smaller plots of this season, this relationship involving Moody and Pearl was really sweet at first. You think that Moody is this guy that is, going to be this friend to Pearl and is really going to help her out. But it went in a direction that I wasn't really expecting at all. And I didn't know if I liked it at first. But what they ended up doing with it, I thought was kind of genius. The way the show would kind of take things in very unpredictable directions, I definitely really did like. I know there's some significant deviations from the book, but as usual, I haven't read the book, so that's not an issue for me. So the fact this show did things in a way that I was not expecting it to do, I thought was really well done, and it really did make sense for the narrative they were trying to tell. It only made the story that much stronger, and that's something that I just really appreciate about this show overall. So yeah, I think the writing here is really well done. There's so much that the show has to say, and they do a really great job with that as well. But like I said, just the narrative in general is just really great. All these characters are so interesting where they end up taking them, and that's something I really did love about the show. Definitely some of the best writing in any show that I have seen so far this year. The cinematography here, I think, is also really well done, especially because the entire show takes place within the span of a year, and again, as the show gets darker, the environment starts to get a lot darker as well. It starts off and it's very bright and it's very sunny and, summer heat and things like that, and everything's going great. But as the year goes on and we start to get to a more wintry type setting, you really do feel the mood changing. And I think the cinematography definitely does a really good job with that. But also the way the show depicts the 90s, I thought was also really well done. It's not something that I knew going into the show. I did not know the show is technically a period piece, but I was very impressed by the way they depicted the 90s here, because they didn't try to shove it down your throat. There were references that, Lexi or her friends or Pearl would make, because of what's going on, because of the times, obviously, but it didn't feel like they were just so into the 90s and that's everything the show was about. I thought they did a good job of walking the line between those two tones, and I was very impressed by the way that was handled here. I thought the cinematography was really well done. There's a lot of great shots in this show, but also the way that they build up the idea of this fire, because from the beginning there's going to be a fire that's going to burn down everything that the Richardsons have ever known. You don't know what's going to cause it, but the way that they subtly do it, I thought was really well done. I, at first, had a problem with them not really going back to this, because for a while it doesn't really feel like that's the main narrative. But the way that they'll show just, Izzy, because Mia is someone that is an artist and Izzy is too, so the way you'll see them like lighting a match and making you think, maybe it's them, or you'll see Mia lighting a picture of Elena and things like that, and you'll think, maybe it's her. So they do a really good job, I think, of kind of getting you to, building up the fact that there is still going to be a fire, but not trying to make that the only focus of the show. The show always has more going on than just that, and that's something I always appreciate. So I think the cinematography was really well done. The score in the show is amazing. I really love the music here. It's very epic. It really does a great job, I think, of revving up the tension, and I just really love the score in this show a lot. And the editing, I will say, one of my only real flaws with this season is that I don't think 8 episodes were enough. I understand that they didn't want to drag this out, but I really did feel that there were some things that came up in the show that would have been that much more effective if they had 10 episodes as opposed to 8, because it did sometimes feel like things were happening a bit too quickly, or we were getting things happening a little too late within the season. So I feel like if they would have had maybe 1 or 2 more episodes, then I think they could have done a good job with that. There's a flashback episode that is actually one of the last episodes of this season, and I actually do feel it might have actually benefited them if they would have done it a little bit earlier on. I think that would have been a little bit more effective, but again, it's not that big of a complaint. But in terms of pacing, I think the show is definitely paced pretty well. In terms of editing, then the only other real flaw that I do have here is the subplot within the show. The subplot of the show, it involves this character, BB, and her trying to get custody of her daughter, Mei Ling, who has now been adopted by Elena's best friends, the McCulloughs. They've been with her for like a year, and when BB finds out, because she works with Mia, she really, she's very eager and very adamant about getting custody of her daughter. And so I don't have a problem with that storyline. My problem is I think they did a pretty good job with BB. I don't think they did as good of a job with the McCulloughs, because I never really felt like I knew them as characters. The only things we really know is that these are characters that really want this baby. They've treated her as her own. And towards the back half, they do start to give them a bit more of a character, specifically Linda McCullough. But it all just felt a little too late. And I wish it would have been peppered more throughout the season, because it does become a pretty prominent part of the show. And while I was always invested, it was mainly because how it was affecting Elena and Mia. I did not care as much about the McCulloughs or BB in terms of character. And I think they could have done a better job with that. BB as well, her story is just a little too simplistic. I wish there was a little bit more going on there. But aside from that, I don't really have too many flaws within the show. Alright, so now that I've gone through everything that I possibly can, now we need to get into spoilers, because there is a lot that goes on within this show. And I think it would be an absolute disservice to not go into spoilers here, because there's so much to really get into. So I think the first thing I really want to talk about is everything going on with Elena and Mia and their backstory, because I think the show did a really good job of very well setting up what's going on. For Elena, we kind of get this idea that even though Elena has pretty much everything that she'd want, it's not enough for her. And so I do think that their reveals were really well done. Specifically, though, Elena's was much different from what I was expecting. Her essential idea is that everything that she has, yes, this is the life that you might want. You're rich, you have this husband, you have 4 kids, you have everything you could possibly want, and yet it's just not the life that she really desired. And I think Elena is the kind of person that was a free spirit. We see her in her past, and she's far different from how we see her now. She's not nearly as proper. She doesn't feel like she has this desire to be, always doing the right thing. She's not as, she's not as forceful with the way that she does things. She's just a lot different in that way. She's a lot more looser, a lot more carefree. And so I like the way the show kind of gets us into this idea that this is the life Alana wanted. She wanted to be with Jamie. She would have liked for them to end up together. She would have liked to be a little bit more of a traveler. She doesn't really want this life that she has to stick to because she feels that pressure is mounted on her. And so I like that she kind of has to come to that realization that this is the life that she has. She cannot always, she cannot change it. She can't go back. I like that when she goes back for Jamie, he's not okay with that. He is telling her, like, no, this is the life that you chose. And so that is one thing that I feel would have actually benefited them if they would have shown the flashback episode before, because we'd have a little bit more context into what he's talking about. But I still thought it was a very effective scene. And when we eventually get the reveal that Alana was at a place where she was ready to go back to work after she had been, on maternity leave and things like that. And then the second that she did, she realizes that she's pregnant and she can abort the baby. You really do kind of feel for her in that situation. I think maybe the best line of the entire show, the one that stuck with me the most in terms of Alana, is when she goes to her mother and she's talking to her about aborting the baby, and her mom she doesn't tell her no. What she says, I think, is far more haunting, and that is, this is not what we do. Like, and it really makes you think about every single thing Alana has done, and you're like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Why hasn't Alana engaged in some of the things that Mia has? Why isn't she okay with some of the other, carefree activities? Because that's not at all what Alana is supposed to do. She's supposed to be proper. She's supposed to have a certain reputation. She's supposed to have a certain code of conduct. And you can tell that it's just eating away at her. And the way that she projects all of this frustration and anger onto her youngest daughter, mainly because she didn't want her, I think is a great idea. And I know that's a new idea from the book, but I think for the story that they were telling, it makes perfect sense why Alana would go in that direction, why she would have this vitriol for Izzy in the way that she does, because again, from the beginning, there's something up with that relationship. The fact she's not calling her by her real name, the fact that she isn't okay with really anything she's doing, and all that the thing that takes for Izzy to finally be noticed is to burn her hair off and write down, I'm not a puppet on her forehead. You can see how this really is not doing anything for Alana, and I like the way the show portrays that these two are never going to have that relationship. You think there's going to be that one scene in, episode 3. I was like, okay, this is a really sweet thing. But even at that, Izzy's wearing a dress. She's going to homecoming. This is something that Alana sees as okay. So that's why she's a little bit more nurturing towards her. So I think that reveal tracks a lot better, because you can look at certain things that has happened between Alana and Izzy, and it really just gives you a lot more context into what's going on there. And I thought that was definitely very well done. But I also love the way that this contrasts with Lexi's current storyline, with her and her whole situation with her boyfriend, stemming all back to what she did to Pearl, with her stealing this story that Pearl told and using it as her essay, and this is the thing that gets her into Yale. Again, it's something that Alana is so happy about. She's so, proud of her, but we know that Lexi actually didn't do much to get that. She used someone else's story. She did not get there fairly, and I think that's a really great story for this character, because again, Lexi has kind of been conditioned to feel that this is okay. She's not doing anything wrong. The way that she rationalizes things is just insane. You can't stand this character. But I really love where they ended up taking her, especially with her getting that abortion, because it kind of makes you realize Lexi did the thing that Alana couldn't. She did it, but still, even at that, she did not tell Alana. So there's a lot of mirroring between those two, but it also does feel like Lexi is getting to do a lot more of the things that Alana didn't do, because, well, it just wasn't seen as okay. And so she didn't do it. And so you really do understand that relationship very well. Alana just doesn't understand Lexi. And I think that was a really good way of showing that Alana, not just with Izzy, but is not a good mother to any of her kids because she just simply does not understand them. She doesn't understand that Lexi is having the abortion. She doesn't understand that Trip is, seeing Pearl behind Moody's back. She thinks that Moody and Pearl are together, which they're not. She doesn't understand that Moody is, well, basically that throughout most of the season. So I think they did a really good job in just showing just how bad of a mother Elena really was and how little she really knew about her kids. It was definitely a very effective moment and definitely one of my favorite parts of the show for sure. But then going over to Mia and what happened with her, again, I really was not expecting. With, the constant the constant nightmares of this guy in the subway and her just freaking out and not wanting Pearl to know about her dad. I really thought they were leading towards maybe her possibly being raped. I was really hoping they weren't going to go there because it's a very heavy subject and I was not at all prepared for them doing that. So when they eventually reveal what was going on, I was really surprised that that's where they took her. I did not think we were going to go in this direction where it wasn't a rape, it was that this guy wanted to have kids and him and his wife couldn't. And so they looked at Mia as the surrogate. She was supposed to carry this baby and then give it to them. And her visions is not her being scared because this guy did something to her. It's because she is terrified that one day they're going to call her and they're going to discover that Pearl is alive. And I think this did a really good job of showing that Mia is not the greatest person ever. I mean, she's literally been living a lie for like a bunch of her life, making Pearl think that this was, that her father was like a really terrible person and that her father wanted nothing to do with her when that was simply not the case, but also lying to this couple that their baby was dead and that there was nothing else going on in that. And the fact that she's been so terrified, I think, is a really interesting idea. But you also really do find yourself caring for Mia because she actually was in a very similar. But you also do see the hypocrisy in Mia because she was in a very similar situation as Elena. The family that she was in before she left for college was very strict with the way that they did things. They were very religious. They came from a very specific background, and they didn't want Mia to end up the way that she did. They didn't like the fact that Mia was a lesbian. They didn't like the fact that Mia had taken this baby. They didn't want anything to do with her. And so I thought they did a really good job with that. And similar to how the only saving grace in Elena's family is Izzy, the only saving grace in Mia's family was her brother Warren, who I loved what they did with that, with their whole relationship. And then when Warren eventually died, you really do feel it. And I like that this was only one episode, but yet they were still able to get you fully attached to that relationship. I thought was a really interesting idea. The idea that I'm a little bit more conflicted with is what they did with her and Anika Noni Rose's character. I get it that they wanted to show that Mia was a lesbian to kind of show why her and Izzy bond as well as they do, because Mia is kind of the black sheep in her family and Izzy's very obvious, because, Izzy's the black sheep of her family and Mia's kind of the same for hers. So I understood that. But the fact that they took Pauline and Mia into this sort of student-teacher relationship, I thought was a little problematic in the way that they did it, but I think the show did enough work to show why it did go in this direction, because this is something that Mia wanted. This was what Mia wanted from the beginning. She wanted more of a relationship with Pauline, but that wasn't really the case, and then when they started to get closer, Mia just lost it all. I think that mainly is what made that storyline work for me. The idea that Mia basically lost everything and that Pearl was like her one last thing that she was attached to, was the last thing that she had. And so rather than just take that away and lose that one last thing from her life, she decided to hold on to it. It gives you a little bit more sympathy. It makes you understand her decision more. And so I think they did a really good job with that overall. I was very impressed by the way they went about that here. And so because of what really went down with Mia, it makes her whole story with BB, it makes a lot more sense why Mia is, so adamant on BB winning this case, because her whole thing with BB is that she wants her to, you know, have her baby, the baby that was supposed to be hers, that was adopted by someone else. And now, essentially, that's what's happened with Mia. It's not just because BB is this woman that normally would not be taken seriously during this whole thing. I mean, there's that line with Bill where he says women like BB Chow, you know, are not taken seriously in that way. And that's very unfortunately true. I think that still could be true today, honestly. I think that still is something that does happen. But that whole you know, that the whole custody battle was really well done, because it really gets you to understand more of Elena and Mia's points of view, where even though Elena is saying she's doing all this for the McCulloughs, she's really doing it to take down Mia. That's why she's doing this. She's doing it because she feels that it is every fiber of her being to take down this person. Everything that she needs to do is to take down Mia, because again, she doesn't want to hold any accountability for herself. And that's why everything that Bill says to her in the finale feels so rewarding. Finally, someone is like calling her out about what she's been doing wrong. The fact that she projects her anger on Izzy. She projects it on Mia. There's always someone. She can never just say that she is the problem. Elena is the common denominator in all of this. And so I think they built that up very well. And again, similar to Lexi, someone that doesn't take accountability for herself. The difference is that Lexi realizes the error of her ways, and it takes for Brian to break up with her for her to really do that. I love the scene where Lexi talks about how she feels this desire to just always be perfect, and there's all this pressure that is mounted on her. Because even though she sounds really pathetic, we know that this is true. We know that the second that Lexi does something that Elena doesn't see as just the perfect thing to do in that situation, she's gonna care about her a little less. Because she sees Lexi as the example, and so because of that, Lexi always feels she has to do the right thing. She always feels like, you know, there are things that she's supposed to do and that nobody's going to call her out for. And her getting an abortion doesn't fit in line with all the other things that she's done up to this point. And so I thought that that was a really well done scene. And again, Jade Pettyjohn just absolutely killed it there. And things like that I thought were definitely very well handled. And some of the smaller arcs even in this season, like what went on with Moody, I was so shocked where they took that, because you think that Moody is going to at first be the nicest of the Richardsons. He's going to be the one to really take Pearl under his wing, you know, really try to get her more involved with this community and things like that. But then once she starts dating Trip, he really kind of starts to be ridden out of the show a bit. I was really worried that they were going to take him in a direction where he just didn't have much to do. But once he finds out what's actually going on with Pearl and Trip, his reaction was not what I was expecting. He is way more violent. He is way more erratic about what's going on, and I love the conversation with him and Izzy, where Izzy basically tells him that he's not mad because Pearl lied to him. He's mad because he felt Pearl was his. Like, he didn't feel that Pearl should be with anyone else except him. He kind of felt like he earned her. And again, it's similar to a lot of these Richardsons, where they feel that they are privileged. They feel that they deserve these things. You know, Lexi feels that she deserves going to Yale. Lexi feels like, you know, she deserves, you know, the friendship that she's gotten with Pearl. She feels like she deserves her boyfriend. None of these Richardsons feel like they've worked for what they have because they don't need to, and that's very similar to Moody in that way. And so I really like the direction that he went into there. I was not expecting for them to do that at all, and I thought that was definitely very effective for sure. And then contrasting that with Trip, who I really thought from the beginning was going to end up being like, you know, just a dick because, you know, he's the older brother and he gets a lot of girls. And I thought he was just like using Pearl for sex. But we realized that he really actually does care about her and he wants a genuine relationship there. He's very disheartened, you know, to find out that she's left. And I think that that was really well done. So I liked it a lot. I like the way the show subverted my expectations in that way, but not in the sense where they did something different so it's good. No, it felt like a natural progression for these characters because we've been conditioned to think that they go in this direction, and it just felt like, this could be realistic. This is how this would actually play out. And I thought that was definitely really well done for sure. I really did appreciate that overall. Of course, everything else really does go to shit within the finale. There's so much to talk about that goes down here, and I think they did a really good job overall with everything. I think the first thing to really talk about is what we find out about Izzy, because again, throughout a lot of this season, we're kind of led to believe that she's been sexually assaulting someone, that, she is closeted, and that she's, just really not, she's the black sheep of the family, and she is that way for a reason. But we realize instead that it's actually a completely different situation. It's that she used to date this girl, April. These two were friends, but they also were a lot more than that. And April clearly is afraid of coming out of the closet. She doesn't want that to be, she doesn't want that to be known to the public. So whenever she is in public, she is just a complete bitch to Izzy. She wants nothing to do with her. She will constantly like insult her and straight up bully her and things like that. But then when they're together, April is a lot more caring. She's a lot more herself in that way. And so I thought that was a really well done reveal. It made you understand why Izzy is the way she is. The fact that she quite literally has no one except Mia. That's the only person that she does have. And so it's that much more heartbreaking, I think, that Mia is the person that's taken away from her, that Mia is the one that has to leave because of everything that went down, because of Alona basically, again, projecting her anger and her utter failure as a parent onto someone else, and just realizing, oh, this is your fault, not wanting to take any accountability for what she did. It's that much more heartbreaking that Izzy has to lose Mia at that moment, and I thought they did a really great job building that up. But again, that's one of those things where while I think they did a really good job with finally giving Izzy that necessary backstory, I wish it was throughout the season. I wish we got to see a little bit more of her and April, so that way we could really understand what Izzy was doing. Again, I do think they made up for that in these last two episodes, though, because Izzy very quickly became my favorite character in the show after those last two episodes. I think they did a really great job with where they end up taking her as a character. Stuff with Elena and Mia and her going as far as to tell Pearl the truth about her biological parents, and the way that Pearl goes off on Mia, it's very understandable. But the way that Elena actually doesn't ruin it, it doesn't go her way, is fantastic. It's the first time that Elena has not successfully, you know, sabotaged everything. Actually, it gets Mia and Pearl to be a lot closer because now Pearl doesn't have, Mia has nothing to hide. Mia makes it very clear she's not going to lie anymore. She wants to be more honest with Pearl. She doesn't want to lose her. And, we know that Mia's one goal throughout this entire show has been to protect Pearl. That's the reason why she took the job that she did, because she wanted to protect Pearl. It wasn't because she cared about Elena or cared about the Richardson family. She did it because she wanted to protect her. And I thought that was definitely a very, very effective reveal for sure. And so when they decide to go to, her actual parents' house, I thought was great. And the second that she told her, like, no, I know where we want to go, I knew that that's where they were going. And I like that we actually don't get to see that outcome. I know some people are saying, like, that's how they leave it open for a season 2, but, like, I don't want to see that. Same with, like, Izzy possibly, getting a ride from Mia and Pearl. I don't want to see that. I want to believe that maybe that's going to happen, but also maybe it won't. It's what Izzy wants to happen. And if they actually would have done that, it would have just felt way too convenient. So I'm glad that they did not go in that direction. I think it was definitely the right approach for sure. And the letter that Pearl gives to Mia at the end, I think, really does a great job of summing up every character in this show. The whole point of this show is that Pearl thought what she wanted was to be more popular, to be in this bigger community of people that loved her, and, people that were better off. But what she didn't realize she really wanted was a mother that was open and honest with her and that she can have a good relationship with. And I think that's why she was so attached to Elena in the way she was. It wasn't because she wanted to emulate their style. I don't think it was that at all. I think it was that Elena was way more opening to her. She was way more open with her. She wasn't afraid to have those serious conversations that Pearl couldn't have with Mia, and because Mia was so closed off in that way. And so I think while the show definitely portrays Elena as the big villain here, Mia is not totally out of the woods either, and I think Mia realizes that. The thing is, Mia realizes what to do way before Elena does. Mia doesn't have everything stripped away from her in order to do that. All she has is Pearl in that way, and she realizes that in order to keep Pearl and in order to have a good relationship with her, she needs to be honest with her. She needs to give Pearl what she wants, and what Pearl wanted was a father. Pearl wanted to know how she came to be, and I like that Mia is finally being honest with her about it. And again, like I said, I don't want to see a season 2 of the show. I feel like that is just the perfect way to wrap things up, and I love the way they ended that there. But I like that in the end, Elena is still very much painted as the villain here. I think that was definitely the right place for them to go, because again, the way they set up the fire throughout the entire season is really well done, but the real question is who's going to set it. And when Izzy was having that conversation with Mia, I really was sure that she was going to be the one to set it. And I was like, no, I don't want that. What happened in the show is what I wanted to happen, thankfully. I really, because again, like I said, these siblings are not acting like siblings. They're not bonding. They're not helping each other out. They're not talking through their problems. They're just constantly just shutting themselves out. They want nothing to do with each other. When Lexi has an abortion, and Izzy confronts her about it, she just slams the door in her face. So, like, they're not bonding. So I really thought they were getting to a point where the one thing they're all going to collectively do is decide to set the house on fire, to rid themselves of this lifestyle, because they realize what it's going to do them, that it's going to damage them. It's not a good thing that they're in this position. But I like that Izzy's actually not the one to set it, because that would have been the easy thing for them to do. I like that Izzy actually wasn't involved at all. I like that when Bill says she has nothing to do with this, that's actually true. She did have nothing to do with this, and the reveal that it's actually the three of them that said it. And especially I like that Lexi is the one to instigate this, is a genius idea, because it's easy for Elena to believe that she fucked up with the child that she didn't want. It's not easy for her to come to terms with the fact that the child that she has been praising as the example and looking at as the perfect child is anything but that, is inherently very flawed, and just has had so much more beyond the surface that Elena has just not seen. And so I like that this is the thing that makes Elena finally start to take accountability for what she did, because she definitely did set that fire. Despite the fact that Izzy and Trip and Moody, they ignited it, she's the one that set everything in motion. Why did Moody and why did Izzy run away? Well, that was because of Elena. Why did Mia and Pearl leave? Because of Elena. Why did BB take her daughter? Well, that was because of Elena and her doing everything she can to make sure that the McCulloughs won. Everything that's proceeded in the show, every single act that has gone down, is mainly because of Elena. There's only a couple things that is not because of her, and so I like that she finally takes that accountability, and it's the perfect message, when her cradling that feather that Mia had, the feather that basically set in motion just Izzy always being looked at as the problem child in that way. I like that she finally calls her by the name that she's wanted to be called. But again, it's a perfect example of not knowing what you had until it's gone. Elena's not realizing just how badly she's, screwed up until it's gone. Izzy's not going to come back. Izzy does not want Elena. She wants to be with a family that actually gives her the proper love, the proper devotion, the proper acceptance, things that Elena simply never did, things that her siblings never did, things that even Bill never did. There's that scene with Bill, you think maybe he's going to finally, do something for her, but no, he's just too passive aggressive to do that. He'd rather run away from his problems than actually face them. And that's what Elena is finally forced to do. And I just thought that was so brilliantly handled. I love the way we ended the show with that. And I just thought it was pretty much perfect the way things did go down there. I really did not have any complaints with the way things happened. And then as far as the McCulloughs go, like I said, I thought that they did an okay job in this back half, really getting you to understand them more. The fact that they have wanted a child for so long and didn't get you to realize why they care so much about Mei Ling or Mirabella, and I think that was really good. But they also did show that they are also very flawed when Linda brings up how she hasn't exposed Mirabella to her culture in the right way. They haven't been able to find an Asian doll and things like that, and that she, just kind of whitewashed her in that way. Again, it's very problematic in the way that was done, and it makes sense why BB would take her kid because she's so enraged. And she probably, the thing is though, BB is probably going to be arrested based on what happened, and so it's a good ending for her character. But it also makes you realize that in the end, the McCulloughs are going to win, and it doesn't seem right. It doesn't seem right, but that is what ends up happening, and that is predictably what was always going to happen. And so I like the way the show went about that. I like that they didn't try to make BB win because it would not have been realistic. As much as we want BB to win, that would not have been the realistic direction to go in. And also, again, just reinforces the idea that this is really just all Elena's fault and her constant meddling. It's just set off this chain reaction of sorts, and I just thought that was a really great way to wrap things up. And like I said, there definitely were some things I wish we could have delved a bit more into. Maybe set up Pearl and Tripp's relationship a little bit more. Maybe set up the divide between Moody and Tripp a little bit more. Set up what's going on with Izzy a little bit more. They could have done that, but the way the things ended, it all just felt kind of perfect. I really couldn't have asked for it to end any better than it really did. I mean, where all these characters went, especially like, say, Lexi and how much she changed at the end of the show, it all just felt so perfect. It all just felt like they really hammered those points home very well of what is going to happen to this family that was seemingly so perfect but had so much going on that they just did not know about. And the fact that now they have to rebuild, they need to start over. I like that we don't actually see that. We don't know how this family is going to turn out, if they're going to be able to rebuild. We don't know if Elena and Bill are going to be able to rekindle that relationship. We don't know if Elena is going to change for the better. I mean, at this point, I think she's pretty much irredeemable. The second that she told Pearl about, what her mother didn't want her to know, I think that alone made her irredeemable. But, I think they just did a really good job with hammering that home, and I really couldn't have asked for a better ending here. So overall, Little Fires Everywhere is definitely one of the most riveting, one of the most powerful, and one of the most interesting, I think, character studies that I've seen in quite a long time. It's got some incredible performances from pretty much everyone involved. Reese Witherspoon and Kerry Washington obviously being amazing, but really Megan Stott, Jade Pettyjohn, and Lexi Underwood, they really are the big standouts here. Reese Witherspoon as well is a big standout for sure. It has fantastic writing. It has great social commentary on race, social classes, tons of tension going on, all that kind of stuff I think is so well exhibited throughout the show. What it has to say about both of these two women and how different they are, but also how similar they are, I really did love as well. It's got stunning cinematography, a really great score. It goes in some directions that I really wasn't expecting at all. And overall, I think it's just a thoroughly very entertaining watch that I highly recommend for sure. Yes, like I said, it did take some liberties from the book, and I know some people are kind of upset about that, but if you are able to overlook that, I think this is definitely a show that is very much worth your time. It's not like Big Little Lies, thankfully. It very much is its own thing, and that's why I ended up really appreciating the show at the end of the day. This is definitely one of my favorite shows so far this year, and I'm definitely going to give Little Fires Everywhere overall an A-. But over, guys, in my review of Little Fires Everywhere. Let me know what you guys saw of this show overall. Left your thoughts on it. We'll see you guys in my next video, and we'll see you guys for that. Okay, bye.